Imagine, if you will, the typical music festival experience. You're probably picturing what? Uh, a huge muddy field.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe it's drizzling, everything is kind of a mess. Or maybe you're lucky, it's boiling hot, you can't get enough water.
Right, you're navigating these just dense crowds, elbowing your way through.
Totally. Maybe a bit tired, too little sleep, maybe a few too many warm, cheap beers. And you're straining your neck, just trying to see your favorite band,
Yeah.
who looks like an ant on this distant stage.
Yeah.
Honestly, on paper, it sounds kind of rough, doesn't it? Like an endurance test, not a fun weekend.
It does. And yet, despite all that, the actual dirt, the being tired, the just overwhelming number of people, music festivals aren't just popular. They're, well, the sources say almost universally adored.
Right. Tickets vanish in seconds, like literally seconds, often before you even know who's playing.
Even if the lineup ends up being, well, let's be honest, sometimes a bit mediocre.
Exactly. So that's the paradox, isn't it? It raises this really fascinating question. What is it, really, that makes us love these dirty, tiring, super crowded events so much? Why do we keep going back?
And that is precisely the question we're getting into today. Because the answer, well, it sounds simple, but it goes much deeper than just, liking the music.
Okay.
Yeah. The core idea we're going to unpack in this deep dive is something sociologists call collective effervescence.
Collective effervescence.
It's defined in our sources as the perceived energy resulting from the gathering of a large group. So it's not just about the bass vibrating in your chest or the light show.
It's something else.
It's something much more fundamental about connection, shared experience, maybe even briefly losing yourself in something bigger.
And for this deep dive, you, our listener, have given us this incredible stack of sources, articles, research papers, notes. It's a really comprehensive look at music festivals.
It really is.
So our mission today is to pull out the most important bits, the key insights from all this material. Think of it as like your shortcut to really understanding this phenomenon. We'll get into the surprising facts, maybe have a little fun along the way.
Definitely.
We're going to look at the history, the psychology behind it, the cultural impact, the economics, which are huge, and even some of the challenges and what the future might hold.
It's a multi-layered thing.
Totally. Get ready, because this might just change how you think about standing in that muddy field.
So to really get why festivals have such a strong pull, we need to start with a connection that honestly might seem a bit strange at first.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
It's the link between these huge modern gatherings and, well, ancient religious ceremonies.
Religious ceremonies, really?
Yeah, really. We're going back, way back, over 100 years, to the work of the French sociologist Émile Durkheim, specifically his big 1915 book, The Elementary Forms of Religious Life.
Okay, Durkheim. I remember him from SOC 101.
Right, so Durkheim argued that religion, at its core, isn't just about belief systems. It's a system of beliefs and practices focused on what he called sacred things.
Sacred things.
And he said that rituals are absolutely crucial for keeping any religion going. They're not just symbolic, they're like the engine of the whole collective thing.
So rituals are key. How does that connect to, Glastonbury or Coachella?
Well, Durkheim put it really clearly. He emphasized that societies basically feel the need of upholding and reaffirming at regular intervals the collective sentiments and the collective ideas which make up its unity and its personality.
Okay, so groups need to regularly get together and remind themselves what they're about.
Exactly. And he stressed this wasn't just thinking about it, this moral remaking, as he called it, this renewal. It only happens through reunions, assemblies, and meetings where the individuals being closely united to one another reaffirm in common their common sentiments.
So getting together physically is vital.
Absolutely. He saw these gatherings as being fundamentally like religious ceremonies, not just in their goal, but in how they worked socially. It's about the group reinforcing its identity, feeling that shared emotion, that rush of being part of something bigger.
Okay, I can start to see the parallel now. When you bring that idea forward to today's massive music festivals.
It clicks, right? Like those older ceremonies, festivals are incredibly good at fostering collective sentiments. They're really powerful in integrating attendees into a festival tribe, even if it's just for the weekend.
A festival tribe, I like that.
And our sources mention Fabiani's idea, too, that the really successful festivals manage to link the aesthetic, the quality of the music, the performances with the social side, the feeling of being in that crowd.
Right. So the music's important, obviously, but maybe not the only important thing.
That's where it gets really interesting. The music, as much as we love it, might often be sort of the main stage for something else, something deeper happening in the crowd.
The vehicle for that collective feeling.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And building right on Durkheim's work, another sociologist, Randall Collins, in his 2004 book Interaction Ritual Chains, he kind of formalized this.
All right.
Collins identified several key ingredients that are needed for any ritual or, a festival in our case, to really work to generate that high level of collective effervescence.
Key ingredients,
Yeah.
like a recipe for a good festival vibe.
Kind of, yeah. And what's fascinating and what the sources really show is how these ingredients, which he first applied to, serious religious rituals, perfectly describe the modern festival experience. It's almost like we're hardwired for these kinds of intense shared gatherings, whether we're focused on a sacred text or a bass drop.
Okay, so let's unpack Collins's first essential ingredient for a successful interaction ritual. It's the need for bodily co-presence.
Bodily co-presence. Sounds a bit academic. What does it mean in practice?
It basically means, as he put it, two or more people are physically assembled in the same place so that they affect each other by their bodily presence.
It's just being there together physically.
Yeah.
Exactly, whether it is in the foreground of their conscious attention or not. So just the fact that you're physically near other people matters, even if you're not directly talking to them.
And that's especially important now in our sort of screen-based world.
That's what the sources argue, yeah. In this contemporary mediatized society where we interact so much online, there's this irreplaceable value in actual physical presence, being there.
Yeah, that makes sense. You can't really replicate that online.
Think about it. Imagine watching a festival live stream on your laptop. High definition, great sound, maybe.
Right, comfortable couch, no mud.
Exactly. But could you honestly say you attended the festival?
No, probably not.
You'd miss so much. The sources say you'd miss the actual dirt, exhaustion, and presence of other people. It makes for a rather weak interaction ritual.
Because so much happens non-verbally.
Precisely. So much of our micro-coordination, our understanding of the group mood happens bodily. It's unconscious.
Like how a crowd sways together or everyone cheers at the same moment.
Exactly that. Collins talks about the quick interplay of voice rhythms and tones, emotional expressions, gestures, and touch. It's this constant, subtle feedback loop. And as the excitement builds, you can literally feel it. The sources say crowds become electrified.
Yeah, I've felt that buzz.
And you might find yourself dancing or singing along to a band you don't even really like.
Guilty.
Right. You just get infected by the energy of everyone around you, the sheer physicality of it. It's like emotional contagion, a really powerful part of the whole thing.
Okay, so physical presence is ingredient number one. What's next?
The second key element Collins identified is boundaries. There are boundaries to outsiders so that participants have a sense who is taking part and who is excluded.
Boundaries. Like literally fences and wristbands.
That's part of it, the physical side. But it's also symbolic. Knowing who's in and who's out is vital for creating that strong group feeling. It helps define the U.S.
Okay. And that doesn't just happen at the festival, right?
No, absolutely not. The sources emphasize this boundary work starts long before the festival actually takes place.
How so?
Well, think about just choosing which festival to go to. There are so many options. Your choice tells us something about the kind of person you are, or at least the kind of vibe you're seeking.
Right, like someone going to a huge EDM festival is probably looking for a different experience than someone at a folk festival.
Exactly. You're already self-selecting your tribe, in a way. That choice itself starts building that togetherness and group mentality.
And then there's all the buildup.
Oh, totally. The whole pre-festival buzz. Managing to get those hard-to-nab festival tickets when others missed out, that feels like an achievement, right?
Definitely gives you bragging rights.
Then posting about it online, seeing which friends are going, commenting on lineup announcements, planning the trip, coordinating outfits.
All that anticipation.
All of it, the sources say, sets the groundwork for the group sensation. You're building the in-group identity before you even pack your tent.
Okay. And then when you actually arrive.
It becomes really obvious, doesn't it? You can spot fellow festival goers miles away.
Yeah, the uniform.
The clothing style, often matching the music genre, the huge backpacks, the crates of beer, the smiles.
You know who belongs.
Right. And once you're inside the gates, you're acutely aware of who's part of this temporary world and who isn't. It's about forming this temporary but really intense tribal identity. You're all in it together.
Okay, so bodily presence, boundaries. What's the third ingredient?
The third is having a mutual focus. Collins says people focus their attention upon a common object or activity, and by communicating this focus to each other, become mutually aware of each other's focus.
So everyone looking at the same stage, watching the same band?
Exactly. The artists on the stages provide that unifying point. Everyone directs their attention there, and you know everyone else is doing the same. That allows you to feel they're acting as a group.
It synchronizes the crowd.
Precisely. And it's not always about positive feelings, interestingly.
What do you mean?
Well, you can all collectively love a DJ set, obviously. But the sources give an example where the crowd shares their anger about, say, an artist who's clearly messed up and can barely perform.
Oh, right. I can imagine that collective groan.
Or people complaining to each other, maybe even booing together. That shared disdain can also create strong interaction rituals. It's still a shared focus, a shared emotion, even if it's negative. It bonds people through that shared experience.
Huh. Never thought of it that way. Shared misery can unite.
It absolutely can. Which leads nicely into the final key ingredient for a successful ritual.
Let me guess. Shared emotions.
You got it. A shared mood or emotional experience, as one source puts it very simply. There's no great party without a shared mood. That collective feeling is the magic ingredient.
And again, not always sunshine and rainbows.
Not necessarily. The source gives a great anecdote about how even horrible weather can make for bonding.
Okay, how does that work?
Picture it. Sudden downpour. Everyone's running for cover, helping strangers find shelter, laughing about it, or watching the hardcore folks, the last survivalists, just plowing through the mud, covered head to toe but smiling.
Yeah, you feel a weird sense of camaraderie in that.
Exactly. And those moments create exciting stories to tell when you get home. Saving your tent from flooding, dancing with plastic bags on your feet, helping push a car out of the mud.
They become legendary moments.
They do. They're memorable bonding experiences. So what does all this mean when you put Collins's ingredients together? Bodily presence, boundaries, mutual focus, shared mood.
It means the crowd isn't just a crowd anymore.
Exactly. The source says it can rapidly turn into a tribe, turning strangers into friends, at least as long as the festival lasts. Those bonds forged in that intense shared environment are incredibly powerful, even if they only last the weekend. So Collins doesn't just talk about the ingredients, he also identifies 4 key outcomes of these successful interaction rituals, like the ones at festivals.
Okay, what do we take away from it all?
The first outcome is maybe the deepest one. Participants feel as though they're part of something larger than themselves.
That sense of connection we keep talking about.
Exactly. It generates this powerful feeling of solidarity with everyone else there, even people you don't know. It's a feeling that you're not just you're part of this bigger whole.
And the second outcome.
That's about how individuals feel afterward. People who participate in these strong rituals, they tend to feel confident, elated, and enthusiastic. They gain what Collins calls emotional energy.
Ah, the post-festival glow. I know that feeling.
That's exactly it. That lingering buzz, that feeling of being energized and maybe seeing things a bit differently for a while. That's the emotional energy carrying over.
Okay, makes sense. What's the third outcome?
The third is that these rituals produce symbols of social relationships, or what Collins calls sacred objects.
Sacred objects, like religious artifacts.
You're not necessarily religious in the traditional sense. They're tangible things that become loaded with collective meaning from the experience. And the classic example at a music festival.
The wristband.
Absolutely. That flimsy bit of fabric or plastic, it's way more than just proof of entry, isn't it? It becomes a symbol of the whole thing.
Yeah, people keep them on for ages.
They do. And the source points out the ritual really starts when you buy the ticket and plan the trip. And it doesn't just end when the music stops. People keep that wristband on, treating it as a sacred object.
Why sacred, though?
Because it functions as an emblem of group membership. It visually prolongs the feeling of being part of the greater whole. The source even calls them batteries during everyday life.
Batteries? How so?
Like if you're having a dull day at work or school, you glance down at that faded wristband and it triggers memories of a great and almost sacred experience. It gives you a little jolt of that positive feeling, that emotional energy.
Okay, I get that.
And that leads right into the fourth outcome Collins identifies.
Which is?
The strong emotional reaction you might have if someone, especially an outsider, mocks that dirty piece of cloth on your arm.
Yeah, you'd get defensive, like, you don't understand.
Exactly. You might get genuinely angry because they don't grasp its underlying meaning, the significance it holds for you and everyone else who is there.
It's more than just fabric. It's a symbol of the tribe.
Precisely. The source explains that violating a sacred object, a symbol of the group, means a violation of the standards of morality of the group. That's why festival goers react strongly to negative comments from outsiders.
Because the outsiders just see the mud or the lineup.
Right. They might only take a look at the music lineup, but miss the social aspect of the festival. Collective effervescence.
So this brings us back to that big question. Is the music the main event, or is it just the setting for this deeper social thing?
Well, the source makes a pretty bold claim here. It concludes, while music is a central element, the performing artists themselves are somewhat interchangeable and hardly impact on the success of the festival for most visitors, at least.
Wow. Interchangeable. That's controversial.
It is, but the argument is that what's really being celebrated, what people really crave and remember, is the collective effervescence, the energy of being together and feeling collective sentiments.
So festivals are like modern-day secular rituals.
That's exactly the conclusion. They're seen as contemporary religious gatherings where a sense of togetherness instead of individualistic experience is celebrated. It echoes Durkheim again. People need ways to justify and theorize these collective experiences. And what's being justified and celebrated here is that incredibly powerful force of human connection.
Okay, let's zoom out a bit and look at the history. Festivals aren't exactly new, are they?
Not at all. The word itself, festival, comes from Old French, meaning something like suitable for a feast, solemn, magnificent, joyful, or even medieval Latin, referring to a church holiday.
So ancient roots.
Deep roots. Ancient festivals were often tied to religion or the agricultural calendar. Their main goal was bringing the community together, reinforcing shared values, marking key moments.
Like harvests or religious holidays.
Exactly. Think about traditions that still exist like Christmas, Diwali, Chinese New Year, Eid al-Fitr, or even way back, like ancient Egyptian victory festivals. They were about reflective observance, a communion of spirit. The individual was part of the collective purpose.
But something changed with modern society.
Definitely. As industrial society took over, we started to lose touch with agrarian rhythms and those old community structures, and the festival changed with it.
How so?
It became more and more commercialized, started chasing, as the source puts it, fickle communities and trends instead of reinforcing long-held traditions.
And the focus shifted.
Yeah. The source says bluntly, ancient gods are replaced by rock gods and food gurus. The emphasis moved away from collective reaffirmation towards, well, profit and individual enjoyment.
When did the modern music festival really take off?
Things really started cooking in the mid-20th century. You had these iconic festivals that just changed everything. Isle of Wight in '68, Woodstock in '69, Glastonbury starting in 1970.
The legendary ones.
Right. Hundreds of thousands of people gathering for peace and music. They were protesting the war, corporate culture, that whole summer of love vibe.
So they started as counterculture movements.
Initially, yes, they were billed that way, highlighting the social divisions, but also creating new kinds of unity among attendees separate from the mainstream.
And that evolved.
It did. Particularly in the UK, you had the Second Summer of Love in the late 80s.
Acid house and raves.
Exactly. Acid house music, MDMA-fueled parties. It was about youthful escapism, maybe some nonviolent anti-establishment protest.
But did it weaken community ties in some ways?
The source argues it did. It weakened traditional roots of community by making a virtue of difference and rebellion, usually with healthy doses of drugs and drink. Unlike ancient festivals that upheld norms, these often disrupted norms of authority, values, and order.
So they started championing individual choice more.
Yeah, that's where modern festivals really leaned into individual free choice and self-expression, sometimes over that older sense of community responsibility.
Okay, so bringing it to today, how do festivals impact youth culture now? They seem huge for young people.
Absolutely massive. They function as this incredible melting pot for self-expression, community building, and cultural exchange. A unique space for young people to figure things out.
Can you give some examples, like in the UK?
Sure. Look at Glastonbury. It's more than just a festival. It's a cultural institution, almost a rite of passage. It's seen as a beacon of progressive values, inclusivity, social justice are big themes there.
And the variety encourages discovery.
Totally. Its eclectic mix pushes attendees to explore, and that shapes identities. Then you have Rating and Leeds festivals, very rooted in rock and alternative music.
Right, different vibe.
Yeah, they offer a space to just immerse themselves in the music they love, find new bands. Their raw energy and rebellious spirit reflect their young audience, creating solidarity among different youth subcultures.
And for other scenes, like
Download Festival is key there. It provides that space for young people to express their individuality and connect with like-minded peers. Building that community is crucial, the source says, for young people navigating adolescence.
It's more than just the music then.
Much more. A study on Bonnaroo emphasized how the lived experiences and values transcend the boundaries of the weekend and shape the lifestyles of people who go. It's about inclusion, escape, finding your tribe.
And fashion is a huge part of that identity expression, isn't it? Festivals seem to dictate trends.
Oh, massively. There are significant cultural events that influence fashion and trends way beyond the festival gates. The unique atmosphere encourages people to experiment with their style in ways they wouldn't normally.
Okay, let's unpack that. How does the festival environment drive fashion?
Well, the sources detail specific trends linked to different festivals. Glastonbury, for example, is the home of bohemian chic, flowy dresses, vintage clothing, floral patterns, earthy tones.
Yeah, the classic festival look.
And that look directly influences mainstream summer fashion every year. Then Reading and Leeds have that edgy, grungy, and rebellious style. Band t-shirts, ripped jeans, leather jackets, combat boots. That feeds right into streetwear trends.
And download.
Defined by heavy metal aesthetics, lots of black clothing, band merchandise, studded accessories, heavy boots. It's a very clear visual identity.
What about smaller, more alternative festivals?
Festivals like Boomtown Fair, Green Man, they're known for really creative and eclectic fashion. They encourage individuality, bold and imaginative outfits, often with a DIY approach that actually inspires sustainable trends too, upcycling unique pieces.
So it's not just copying, it's also innovation.
Right. And all of this has a huge ripple effect on mainstream fashion. High street brands, designers, they all draw inspiration from what people wear at festivals.
And social media blows it all up.
Exponentially. Instagram, TikTok, they amplify its influence massively. Influencers, celebrities posting their festival looks set trends instantly. The source mentions #Coachella has been used over 3.5 million times on Instagram.
Wow.
So at the end of the day, festival fashion is a really powerful form of self-expression. It's a visual language of identity and belonging within that temporary world.
Let's shift gears a bit now and talk about well-being. What are the actual psychological benefits for people attending these festivals? It can't just be the escape.
No, the sources point to some really profound benefits. First off, there's a significant emotional release and stress relief. Just immersing yourself in live music, that collective energy can be incredibly cathartic, a real outlet.
Letting go of everyday stress.
Exactly. Then there's that deep sense of belonging and community we keep coming back to. Being surrounded by like-minded individuals really combats feelings of loneliness or isolation. You find your people, even temporarily.
And that connection boosts mood.
Definitely. Festivals often lead to an enhanced mood and happiness. This is linked biologically to dopamine release, triggered by the music, the social buzz, the whole festive atmosphere. It feels good.
Makes sense. What else?
Well, they offer really unique opportunities for self-expression. People feel free to experiment with their appearance, fashion, and behavior in a way they might not normally.
Because it feels like a safe space.
Largely, yes.
Yeah.
That inclusive and non-judgmental environment can really boost self-esteem and confidence. You can try on different versions of yourself.
Interesting. Are there other benefits?
Yeah, the sources also mention mindfulness and presence. When you're really engaged in a performance, dancing, just being there, it can pull you out of your head, reduce anxiety. You're focused on the now.
Like a forced mindfulness exercise.
Kind of. Plus, there's exposure to new experiences and perspectives, different music, art, ideas, which broadens horizons, sparks curiosity. And finally, of course, the social bonding and relationship building, strengthening friendships, making new ones, creating those lasting memories together.
So quite a few potential positives for mental health and connection.
Absolutely. But it's also important to broaden the lens beyond the big commercial festivals.
How so?
We need to talk about Indigenous music festivals. These are incredibly important events that serve as vital platforms for cultural expression, community building, and the promotion of Indigenous artists. Their purpose goes way beyond entertainment.
Okay. What are their key goals?
They have several crucial functions, according to the sources. Firstly, cultural celebration. They're vibrant spaces for Indigenous communities to reinforce their identity and pride through music, dance, storytelling, art.
Keeping traditions alive and evolving.
Exactly. Secondly, artist exposure. They give Indigenous musicians crucial recognition and support, often reaching wider audiences. Thirdly, community engagement, fostering dialogue and understanding, not just within Indigenous communities, but also between Indigenous and non-Indigenous attendees. Breaking down barriers.
And education seems key, too.
Very much so. Cultural education is often a core component, with workshops, discussions, presentations, promoting awareness and respect for Indigenous cultures, histories, languages, and current issues. They are living educational spaces.
Are there specific examples mentioned?
Yes, the sources highlight some notable ones. The Gathering of Nations powwow in North America, Toronto's Indigenous Music Festival, the First Peoples Festival in Montreal, which includes film and visual arts too, and platforms like the Native American Music Awards, NAMA, are also important for recognition.
And this community building isn't limited to just the big festivals.
Not at all. The sources mention other vital gathering spaces, cultural centers, local potlucks, storytelling nights where artists share work more intimately, and significantly, online platforms have become huge, allowing artists to reach global audiences.
With the whole ecosystem.
It is. All these events, big and small, physical and virtual, work together to promote healing, community, and a deeper understanding. They're critical for supporting Indigenous artists and the ongoing revitalization of their cultures.
Okay, we've talked a lot about the positives, the community, the effervescence, but let's pivot now to some of the less positive sides. The commercial aspects, the challenges, like fear of missing out, FOMO. That seems like a big driver now.
Oh, absolutely. And organizers have become very, very good at exploiting it in their marketing.
How is FOMO described in the sources?
It's framed as more than just disappointment. It's a scarcity mindset, a form of loss aversion. It pushes people towards potentially irrational actions just to avoid the feeling of missing out.
And it hits young people particularly hard.
Yes, it's described starkly as an anxiety condition born out of vulnerable youngsters' self-concept journey. It taps right into that need for belonging, social proof, especially when you're figuring out who you are. Promoters know exactly how to push those buttons.
Is there a big example of this going wrong?
The ultimate tragicomic example has to be the Fire Festival.
Oh boy, Fire Festival.
Right. It perfectly illustrates FOMO exploited to the extreme. They sold out tickets on the back of an extensive celebrity image campaign, promising ultimate luxury and exclusivity.
But it was a disaster.
A complete disaster. It never actually happened. Ticket holders were stranded with terrible conditions, no real infrastructure, and no refunds. Billy McFarland's fraudulent marketing, plus the sources highlight the cynically extracted goodwill of the local Bahamian community who are never paid for their work. It was awful.
It's just a total mess.
And it shows the brutal side of the modern festival industry. As the source says, so much wealth generation is now at stake in the FOMO era. That chase for profit led to real experiential trauma for attendees, plus environmental damage and reputational harm. It's a cautionary tale about what happens when hype and greed completely overshadow ethics and reality.
And the pressure isn't just on the attendees, is it? What about the artists?
That's another critical point. The source brings up the incredibly sad case of Avicii.
Yeah, that was tragic.
He tragically struggled with mental health issues after years of relentless touring and performing under immense pressure, feeling like, in his own chilling words from a documentary, a music monkey.
Wow.
He said, "I didn't take the time to think about what I really wanted to do. I just went along with the flow. I was running after an ideal happiness that wasn't my own." It's a heartbreaking reflection on the human cost within the industry.
And does this connect to a broader societal issue? Does just going to festivals make us happier?
That's a key question the sources tackle. The insight is that festival attendance in itself does not necessarily create happy people within communities.
Really? Even with all the benefits we discussed?
Well, think about it. Western nations have gotten richer, festival attendance has exploded, but rates of depression also rose significantly during the 20th century. Consumer power, the ability to buy experience, isolation, and separation, which are described as characteristic of modern ways of living. This suggests we need more systemic approaches to mental health, looking beyond just individual fixes.
And how does this relate back to festivals and group dynamics?
The source introduces this idea of hive psychology. It suggests we can't just study individuals in isolation because groups have emergent properties. The hypothesis is that people need to lose themselves occasionally by becoming part of an emergent social organism, like a festival crowd, to reach their full potential.
Like Durkheim's idea of collective reaffirmation.
Exactly. It echoes Durkheim's view of religion or these rituals generating community cohesion. But the crucial point is, just having a rave as religion is not in itself the solution to mental well-being.
Yeah.
True benefit comes from a mindset of thoughtful engagement, real connection, not just passively being in the right crowd. It's about how you participate.
Right. And another major challenge is accessibility, isn't it? Especially cost.
Huge issue. Particularly in places like the UK, the privatization of culture has created real barriers.
How does privatization play out? Corporate sponsors seem necessary now.
They often are, providing vital funding. But, as the source notes, they come with strings attached. Corporate interests can end up prioritizing profit over cultural enrichment and accessibility. It's a constant tension.
And the most obvious impact is ticket prices.
Absolutely. They've skyrocketed, becoming a significant barrier for so many people. The source gives UK examples. Glastonbury, around £340, Reading and Leeds, £265, Download, £250.
And that's just the ticket.
Exactly. That doesn't include travel, accommodation, food, drink. It all adds up incredibly quickly. It effectively turns these events, which maybe felt more open once, into somewhat elitist events. It limits who gets to experience that collective effervescence.
Does that impact the diversity of the crowd?
It certainly can. The source argues it has a detrimental impact on cultural diversity. Rising costs often lead to a more homogenous audience, frequently skewing towards wealthier, predominantly white audiences.
Which then stifles the cultural mix.
Potentially, yes. It can stifle the cultural richness and vibrancy that comes from having diverse perspectives and subcultures interacting.
And government policy plays a role too.
The sources suggest UK policies have sometimes favored funding large, commercially successful events at the expense of smaller grassroots festivals.
And those smaller ones are often more affordable?
Often, yes. More affordable and inclusive. But they struggle to compete, sometimes get forced to shut down, which further limits choices, especially for younger people or those with less disposable income. It shrinks the landscape. Okay, so we've talked culture, sociology, psychology, but we absolutely have to talk about the economics. Festivals, especially big ones, are serious economic players.
Right. They're not just cultural events, they're businesses, industries.
Exactly. And understanding their economic impact is crucial for policymakers, organizers, everyone involved. They can be massive engines for local and regional economies.
Do we have a specific example to look at?
Yes. The sources provide a really detailed case study from 2024 on the Deccan Festival in Hyderabad, India.
Okay, tell me about it.
It's a big annual event, been running for decades, attracts about 100,000 people over 5 days, big focus on music and dance, but other cultural stuff too.
100,000 people, that's got to have a big impact.
Huge. Let's look at the direct impacts first. The festival generated about Rs 50 crore, that's roughly $6.7 million USD in overall revenue. Just boom, straight into the local economy.
Wow. And what about hotels, restaurants?
Hotels hit a staggering 90% occupancy rate during the festival. That brought in an extra Rs 15 crore, about $2 million USD just for hospitality. Restaurants saw their daily revenue jump by an average of 50%.
50%?
Yeah. And local artisans, the handicraft vendors, they got a massive boost. Many reported their highest sales of the entire year during those 5 days.
So it's a critical time for local businesses. What about jobs?
Significant impact there, too. The festival directly created about 2,000 temporary jobs, staff, security, tech crews, etc. Plus, local businesses hired an extra 1,500 temporary workers to cope with the demand.
So that's 3,500 jobs just for the festival period.
Right. A really substantial boost to local employment, even if temporary.
Okay, those are the direct impacts. What about ripple effects? The multiplier.
Good question. The study used an input-output model to figure that out. You know, how money spent at the festival then circulates through the local economy.
Right, the hotel pays its staff, the staff buy groceries.
Exactly. They calculated an overall economic multiplier of 1.9.
1.9. What does that mean?
It means for every single rupee of direct spending by the festival and its attendees, an additional 0.90 rupees of economic activity was generated elsewhere in the local economy as that money moved around.
So the total impact is almost double the direct spending.
Pretty much. The total economic impact, including these indirect and induced effects, was estimated at around Rs 190 crore, which is about $25.5 million USD.
That's enormous for a 5-day event.
It really is. And on top of that, local tax receipts went up by about Rs 10 crore, or $1.3 million USD during that period, direct benefit to public funds.
So festivals can be serious tourism drivers too then, attracting people from outside.
Absolutely. The Deccan Festival study found 60% of attendees came from outside Hyderabad, and 15% were international visitors.
And they spend money outside the festival too.
Definitely. Domestic tourists spend about $67 a day on average, international visitors $134 a day, and that's on top of their festival tickets for hotels, food, shopping, other attractions.
Does it have a lasting tourism effect? Do people come back?
That's a key finding. 40% of the out-of-town attendees said they were likely to return to Hyderabad for a non-festival visit later on, so it acts as an advertisement for the city itself, potentially generating long-term tourism.
Were there insights from people involved, like artisans or business owners?
Yes, the qualitative data is really interesting. Artisans saw it as a crucial platform for showcasing and selling traditional arts, preserving heritage, and earning income. Many local business owners said the festival was critical for their annual revenue, sometimes making 20–30% of their yearly income in just that 1 week.
Wow, a make-or-break period for some.
It seems like it. City officials also emphasized its role in promoting Hyderabad as a cultural destination, hoping to attract more tourists and investment year-round.
And how did local residents feel, besides the economic boost?
Mostly positive. 75% felt the festival strengthened community bonds and cultural identity. There was a strong sense of pride in showcasing their heritage.
Yeah, so huge economic benefits, tourism boost, community pride. But were there downsides mentioned? Challenges?
Yes, it's important to see both sides. About 20% of residents did raise concerns about traffic congestion and overcrowding, which you'd expect with 100,000 extra people.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Some non-tourism businesses also mentioned disruptions to their normal operations, like delivery issues. And both visitors and locals noted a need for improved infrastructure, better public transport, more sanitation facilities to handle the crowds better, things to work on.
So the takeaway is that the economic benefits are huge, but you also have to consider these less tangible things.
Exactly. The source really stresses that the full picture includes less tangible factors such as cultural preservation, community pride, and social cohesion. You can't put a price tag on those easily, but they're incredibly important parts of a festival's overall value and impact. It's not just about the money. So, as we look ahead thinking about the future of festivals, it feels really important to loop back to those deeper psychological and social points we started with.
Right. Moving beyond just the economics or the fun factor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One source, Craven's 2019 work, argues strongly that we need to move away from a tendency to quantify relationships between well-being and monetary gain and loss. Because, as they put it, there is a larger social picture here.
We can't just measure happiness by dollars spent or earned.
Exactly. And remember how those ancient festivals were all about bonding a community through an open system of shared ideals and activities under the banner of traditions?
Yeah, the focus was on community cohesion, not just individual fun.
Right. They invoked something bigger, a higher order to transcend the self. It was about collective identity.
Whereas modern festivals.
Well, modern commercialized festivals, the source argues, often put materiality front and center. And this focus on profit, on the stuff, can actually lead to values that may actually divide rather than cohere communities.
Wow. Divide rather than cohere.
It's a strong claim, but the idea is that this overwhelming success of individualism has created modern humanity's existential void. Are festivals filling that void or just distracting us from it with consumerism?
That's a heavy question. But are there people trying to push back against that commercial tide, trying to create something different?
Absolutely. And the sources highlight a really inspiring example. The artist Youngblood.
Ah, Youngblood. Okay, what's he doing? Let's unpack this.
He launched his own festival initiative called Bloodfest, and the whole concept is designed to be affordable and inclusive. Tickets priced under £50, which is radically cheaper than most major festivals.
Under 50 quid, that's huge.
It is. And even though it's promoted by a big company, AEG, Youngblood himself emphasizes the main goal is prioritizing music and community over profit. He explicitly wants to challenge the status quo and set a new standard.
So it's a conscious effort to be different. Is it just about price?
No, it goes deeper. Bloodfest is committed to truly inclusive facilities for people with disabilities, accessible viewing platforms, and a real focus on creating a safe and welcoming environment for everyone.
So accessibility in the broadest sense.
Exactly. The vision isn't just affordability. It's about actively fostering a sense of community and unity among attendees, encouraging collaboration, interaction, not just passive consumption.
Could this actually influence the bigger festivals?
The source suggests his efforts have the potential to influence the broader festival landscape. If Bloodfest works, it demonstrates a viable model that does prioritize people and connection alongside the music. It's a blueprint, maybe.
That's hopeful. What other big challenges or trends are facing festivals moving forward?
Well, another source, Lee's analysis from 2025, points to some urgent needs. First, environmental sustainability. Festivals create massive waste, huge carbon footprints. They have to get greener.
Yeah, that feels unavoidable now.
Second, social responsibility. Promoting real diversity and inclusion, genuinely supporting local communities, not just extracting value. And third, embracing technological innovation, maybe using VR or AR or just using tech better for logistics and access.
Are we seeing trends emerging already?
We are. Things like virtual and hybrid festivals, blending online and in-person experiences, a definite growing focus on sustainable and eco-friendly festivals, and more efforts towards immersive and interactive experiences that go beyond just watching a stage.
So despite the challenges, festivals still have potential.
Definitely. The sources stress they retain the potential to continue shaping cultural values and trends. They're unique platforms to drive social change and promote cultural understanding if used consciously.
And for the organizers, the policymakers, what's the key takeaway from studies like the Deccan Festival one?
The big lessons seem to be the need for strategic planning and management, investing in infrastructure, supporting local businesses properly, using diverse economic strategies to ensure benefits are widespread, taking a long-term perspective, not just short-term profit, and crucially, real community engagement to build support and make sure the impacts are genuinely positive and sustainable for everyone. Hashtag tag tag outro.
Wow. We have covered a lot of ground today. We've journeyed through this really surprising world of music festivals, from ancient rituals right up to modern economic powerhouses and trendsetters.
We've seen that undeniable joy, that powerful sense of belonging they offer, that collective effervescence.
Yeah, but we've also looked hard at the challenges, haven't we? The commercial pressures, the accessibility problems, the concerns around mental well-being for everyone involved.
There's definitely a fascinating tension there revealed in the sources, that deep human need for community, for that shared energy, rubbing up against our very individualistic, very commercialized modern world.
And the music, while it's central, maybe isn't the whole story.
It seems the real magic often lies in that shared experience. The temporary tribes we form, the memories we make, those almost sacred moments, it's often what truly lasts.
So as festivals keep evolving, and they have to, right, with calls for more sustainability, more inclusion, they're at a real crossroads.
They really are. Which leads us to a final thought for you, the listener, after joining us on this deep dive.
Okay.
Can the festivals of the future truly capture that profound human desire for collective effervescence? Can they foster genuine community, support well-being, build social cohesion in a way that actually transcends the FOMO, the commercial hype?
Can they become more like those ancient rituals they echo, where the collective maybe mattered more than the individual cost?
That's the question. What role do you think these incredibly powerful gatherings will play in shaping our collective future?